Of college, and I'm driving to Athens with a couple of my friends to go shopping for the day, and we were talking about their experiences at Emmanuel College as women. Both of them were either graduating or having to transfer to an online school for different reasons. And we were talking about the fact that because of the way that the spiritual life community is on campus, there's not a lot of opportunity to be mentored by other women or to be really necessarily poured into spiritually by other women, and just the different ways that that's impacted their education, their time here at Emmanuel. And we were kind of talking about what are ways that we could change that or that we could impact that. And all of a sudden I was like, well, what if we planned a women's conference for Emmanuel? What if we had been able to do that? And we kind of got really excited about it and started talking about all the things we would have wanted to do and the things we would have wanted to include, people we would have wanted to get to come in. And we were just like really excited, talking about the possibility of this thing that we could have done in the past, but obviously weren't able to. And we moved on from that conversation that day, and I didn't really think about it again until it came time for the fall of my senior year, and I was having to pick a senior project. And then all of a sudden that conversation came back to me, and I was like, wow, I can actually do this now, because I can actually plan this women's conference as my senior project, because my classes that I've taken at Emmanuel have actually prepared me for this. Classes like interpersonal communications, small group communications, organizational communications have all prepared me to do what I'm about to do now. And so that's why I chose for my senior project planning a women's conference, both for the women at Emmanuel and the surrounding community. And so just to give an overview of what I want to talk to you guys about today, I want to talk to you guys about what that process looked like. In the middle of talking about my process, I'm also going to be able to share with you about my product, what the end result was, as well as if I could do this project over again, some things that I might do differently. So, as far as the process goes, what I found was the clearest way to explain what my process was and how I went through that and planning this was using the stages of group development that I learned in my small group communications class. Because although I was one person doing this project, I found that because I was working with so many people and was so reliant on that it still really mirrored the same development as the stages of development you learn in small group. And so what those 5 stages are forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And we're going to be going through each of those. So we're going to start with forming. So in forming, the beginning of my project was basically like the brainstorming process. I originally sat down with Mandy Lester, our director of campus life, and she was just kind of like, Brianna, I want you to dream as big as you can. If there was no restrictions, if money wasn't an issue, what would you want this weekend? What would you want this conference to look like? And so you can see here where I have kind of a vision board of different things that I knew that I wanted to pull in and that I knew that I wanted to do. And from there I began assembling a team of people to help support me through this. I had mentors such as my advisor, Dr. Goins, as well as people like Erica Campbell and Ashley Hafner, who had experience in planning these kind of conferences and kind of helped walk me through and knowing what I needed and what I needed to be doing, as well as just friends and family members and people who are really just going to be teammates to me and help to support me through this. And then through gathering these people, I was able to talk through my big ideas with them, and then we were able to scale back and say, okay, what can I take away? What do I not need? What can I cut corners on while still maintaining the integrity of the event? And so that was all of my forming process. From there, once we had a baseline of knowing what we were going to be doing, had a goal set, had some ideas out there, I moved into the storming part of my development of my process. And during the storming is when I really started the bulk of planning this event. So what that looked like was really figuring out my resources. Who am I going to get for speakers? I ended up being able to first of all, have 4 main speakers who were all not from the college, which was really cool to bring in different faces, and that was really important to me. We had Whitney Davis, who is actually the executive director of the IPHC's women's ministry. LaQuia Purcell, who is a speaker who also previously worked at the school, so she knew the culture she was coming into and came highly recommended. Then there was Kaylee Bishop, who is also from Oklahoma, and she was formerly on the board of the Directors of Youth Ministry for the IPHC, as well as is the founder of the online discipleship program, The Kindred Social, and an entrepreneur herself. And then we also had Esther Franco-Gray, who's from Atlanta, and is a speaker as well as now works at a company called Orange, which creates curriculum for churches, which was really cool. So finding those people, making those connections, networking, touching base with them, asking if they would be interested, finding out about travel and transportation, those kind of things, figuring out stage design, how we were going to decorate, how we were going to find money to decorate, basically where am I going to get my money from, finding out that at least a third of it could come from student development, campus life. A third of it came from donations from local businesses, and a third just came from people donating and wanting to support this event. Also during the stage, branding was very important. It was like, okay, let's go ahead and start to develop what this event is going to look like in its promotion. And I was actually able to get a logo designed very early on by one of our graphic design managers, Adam Presley, which was really cool. So we were able to have this logo, which was really important to me because on all of our flyers, on all of our graphics that we put out in the future, they all had this logo, which I think just created a more legitimate feel to the conference, and so that when people saw the logo on anything, they were able to recognize it and know what event they were going to. Another thing during this process was reaching out to venues, coordinating with Guy Chapman and Deborah Grizzle, which was kind of like, could be kind of chaotic because I would give them a date and they would say, well, usually someone does something that weekend, so I don't know if you want to do that weekend, being like, okay, well what about this weekend, and a lot of back and forth, as well as coordinating with local vendors, people like James at Cafe La Vie, and using his space for a registration and clearing that with him, as well as Old Corner Hardware Store. You can see a picture of me with the owner, because coordinating with them and asking if they would be willing to cater on a Saturday when they're not usually open for this event. So all of those things that happened in that process, it was actually super satisfying because you feel like you're getting a lot done, and like there is a lot of, there can be a lot of conflict during that time, but honestly you're just working through all of it. It was really exciting, which made it really hard when I was transferring over into the norming stage, because at that point you kind of have a routine down. You've gotten the big stuff out of the way, the big hurdles have been jumped, and it's like this in-between phase where, for me, it was really anxiety-inducing because I was like, I feel like I must be forgetting something. Hoping that you're not. During this time, it was important to remember to keep advertising. You can see some social media graphics and like our flyer that we had designed. It was really important to me not to just be using Canva or something. We did use that for some of our social media, but for the bulk of what we did, I had friends who were more adept in Photoshop and those kind of programs creating things for me, which was really great. And then just being a town crier, reaching out to people and talking to them and saying, can you talk to your church? Are you interested in this event? Have you heard about the conference that's going on? And just continuously talking to people. Also during this stage, it was just important to, every couple of weeks, checking in with my speakers, checking in with vendors, checking in with people who are over venues to make sure that everything's just still in place over that last, like I guess, month to 2 months, just checking in a lot every few weeks. And then just the millions of other things. I'm not a very detail-oriented person in my day-to-day life, but when it comes to projects like this, all of a sudden it's like every single detail. And so I was making list after list and going through with my head over and over again, is there anything I'm forgetting? Is there anything I need to get? And just making sure that everything was in place for the next stage, which was performing. And the performing stage is when you're really just, you're doing the thing. So during that time, the week before, I'm buying everything that I needed to wait until last week to be able to buy, because before it would have been too soon. And so I'm getting all of these things together, and then actually just having the weekend and everything launching for the first time. Here on the screen you can see an itinerary of the weekend, but I'm going to be talking you through that actually, because we're going to be taking a break in our 5 stages of development to talk about the product. Here you can see a picture of our stage design a little bit there, and then as well as one of our signs that we had made with our logo on it so people would know where the event was. Over here we have a lot more pictures. If you guys at some point later on the day want to be able to look at that, it will be here in this room for you guys to look at. So our first day was Friday. We started out with kind of like a pre-party to set the mood and the theme of the weekend. So we had a group of panel speakers who were people from our community, because while we had outside speakers, it was also really important to me that we had familiar faces that people would know and were involved in the community that we were specifically trying to reach. And so we chose 6 women from diverse backgrounds. It was really important to me to have a diverse set of people from different age groups, different professional backgrounds, so that we were getting varying experiences. And then we had a time of extended worship. Just a time for people to worship to music as well as to receive prayer if that was something they were wanting. And this was really cool because already on the first night, we were getting a lot of feedback. We had girls who were leaving the event and were going and talking to their friends who would then come back to me or others, and they were just talking about how impactful it was to be in a room full of women who understood because they had been there. And that in itself, I was like, if that's all I get from this weekend, that's fantastic, because that's exactly what the purpose of the event was. It was to for people to be able to feel understood and to feel encouraged and empowered by women who could encourage and empower them because they knew what the struggles were, because they knew what it was like, which was a really awesome thing from the first night especially, which is why I think it was such a good move to start with using more local people who were known by the students. Saturday, we had 3 breakout sessions, which were taught by 3 of our main speakers that we talked about earlier. There was a session on relationships, there was a session on business, and there was a session on building the creative spirit, which was about ministry, about being creative and your resources. And so that was really cool. One of my favorite things about this day was the fact that our first class, which was called Building Your Tribe, which was on relationships, we actually ended up having a good mix of women in our breakout sessions. We had like mothers and grandmothers and then college kids too, and they were all in the same classroom, which at first made me nervous. But the thing is, specifically about this class, was that because of the way it was taught, because of the way that it was interactive, and why I did such a good job of bringing that across, was that it transcended the generational lines there, and they were all talking. There was such good discussion, and they were basically able to, not only from the teachers to the people who were attending the sessions, but also from the older people in attendance to the younger, were able to like learn from each other and just talk and discuss, which I thought was really cool. That night we had another breakout session, not breakout session, but a service, where Whitney Davis spoke on building up yourself and identity, and we also had a time of worship, which was, again, just a really great service. Everything ran really smoothly. And then we came and closed up on Sunday morning with one last service where we had worship again. Our speaker, Kaylee Bishop, spoke on building up the kingdom, which was kind of just like a really good cap on the weekend. And really, I think my favorite thing about, well, not my favorite thing, but one of the best things about this weekend was just how smoothly it ran. I really didn't expect, I thought, of course we're gonna like have to jump some hurdles, of course something's gonna happen, we're gonna have something that we're gonna need to fix. But honestly, I kept waiting for the shoe to drop, and it never really did. It really just ran super great, and I accredit that to the fact that I had so many great volunteers and so many great people who were helping during the weekend to make sure that nothing had to go wrong, nothing had to go amiss or anything. And so that was the product, and now, so that's leaving the performing stage. The performing stage is doing everything, and then the 5th stage of group development would be adjourning. And up here you can see that I have a picture of a truck being unloaded, because that's basically what you're doing. You're unloading everything, you're getting it all off your chest, because what we did was we debriefed. And so I had 2 separate debriefs actually, where I debriefed both with my advisor, Dr. Goins, as well as I debriefed with Erica Campbell and Ashley Hafner, since they were 2 people who, again, had really been walking me through this process, had really been walking with me through everything that was going on, as well as just making sure that I had Josiah Trombley come in and take pictures during the weekend, which is where a lot of these, almost all of these pictures come from, and a lot of the ones you've seen in my slideshow come from. And so being able to take those and make an album and put them on our social media as kind of like an adjourning and a wrap up for the audience or the people that we were reaching as well, to kind of say thank you for coming, here's some pictures of the event, maybe you'll see yourself in them. And for people who weren't able to come, hey, here's the thing you've been following for weeks and weeks, this is what happened. So that was kind of adjourning both on my end personally, but also on the end of the people that we were reaching. So those were the 5 stages of group development. So we went through the forming and the storming and the norming and the performing and the adjourning. And now I would like to tell you about, since I've told you about everything that I loved, here are a couple of things that I would do differently if I could. If I could have a do-over, some things that I learned from this is that delegation is key. I would involve more people. I would be better about asking for help and about getting volunteers earlier on for more of it, because this was a beast of a project. And it was a lot to take on for one person, especially starting it in my fall semester when I also had 19 credit hours at the time. It was just a lot. So I would involve more people. Secondly, I would utilize more applications that I realized are for event planning. In doing research on job opportunities in the future, I realized that a lot of event planners use applications such as Hootsuite, which are to help just like keep everything coordinated and organized for you, which would have been really helpful for me personally. And then finally, I would have put someone else entirely over advertising and making that push for people to come. because it was just too much to be coordinating everything, like flight schedules and stuff like that, and all of the money issues and things, and also advertising and posting on social media was just, it was too much for one person, and I definitely would have had someone else entirely just over reaching out to people. So I've taken you through my process of the 5 stages of development. I've talked to you about my product, about my end result, and I've talked to you about what I would do over again if I could. And what I would like to do is close with this quote from Sarah Bessie, which says, "You cannot be full to the brim with Christ's love and peace without spilling over into the lives of others. You learn how to love by being loved. You yearn to heal once you are healed. You receive goodness and bread, and of course, we want to point every other hungry beggar to the source." And so I'm going to ask if Goody and Adam would start passing out these cubes, because that's what this project was for me. For me personally, this project wasn't just a senior project, but it was an opportunity to take a vision that God had given me for this school and to make it a reality, and He granted me the opportunity to build that. And so these are something that we passed out at the end of our conference this weekend for the young women who came, to remember that they are born to build, that they are people who can build their different areas of their own life. And if you get nothing else from this presentation, I would like it to be an example to you guys that each and every one of us have a vision and a purpose that God has gifted in our own life. And just like He presented me with the opportunity to build that specifically through Born to Build, the Women's Conference, He is going to present an opportunity for each of you to be able to build up things in your own life. And so, thank you for listening to this, and I hope you enjoyed it. Are there any questions? Yes, I'll start with that.
Has this experience made you want to organize more conferences yourself in the future, or would you rather delegate it entirely to someone else?
Oh no, I really enjoyed it. Like, it was crazy because doing this honestly just felt so fulfilling, and it was such a good experience for me. Like, I would love to do more events like this, or just jobs that allow me to do this kind of thing more often in the future. Yes, Goody?
Could you see yourself making this an annual thing in a manual?
At a manual, that would be hard since I'm graduating. But there has been talks about keeping the event going. Like, Erica and Ashley, before they even knew that I wanted to do this, were hoping to plan a conference, so there's a possibility they might. I would like the idea of having more Born to Build conferences specifically pop up like everywhere. Like when I go to Hungary in August on an internship, there's I'm potentially going to be able to plan a women's conference there, and I thought it would be really cool to have Born to Build done internationally. So that's an opportunity. So something like that would be cool. Yes.
What was the event called, Born to Build?
So the event was called Born to Build because that was kind of the theme of the weekend. It was based off of a verse in Proverbs, which says, "A wise woman builds up her home while a foolish one tears it down." And I kind of just wanted to take the meaning of that verse and expand it into, okay, as women, we know that we're called to build up things in our lives, but let's expand that. So maybe you're building up a home, or maybe you're building up a business, or maybe you're building up yourself, or just the people around you. But basically, we're all called to build the kingdom of God, and so that's kind of where that name came from. Jonathan, you had some question?
Do you think you found your niche?
I don't know. I really have always enjoyed event planning, which is really weird because I'm not a detailed, like I said, I'm not a detailed person in my everyday life, but when it comes to stuff like this, it's really easy to focus on the details and get all that done. I enjoy it. So, I don't know, maybe, but I like the idea of doing something bigger beyond just event planning as well. So, thank you very much.